you've got to think that they're going to try and maybe throw their opponent off a little bit, try something they haven't seen before.
I wonder, right? Do you have some kind of domestic problem if you cheese your brother?
I don't know, but I would think that the backlash would be quite severe once they get off the stage, if that were the case.
So whenever I got into a fight with my brothers, my mother would just try to stop that conflict. She didn't choose any sides. She just said, stop fighting. That's not really an issue, is it? That's not really an option here, I mean.
My dad would just take our Game Boys in each hand and say one of them is going to get broken in a second if you don't stop fighting. So
that's a very scary threat.
Yeah, I know. Game Boys, first world problems, eh? So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We're on Daybreak. We're going to open with a Wonder Axe Gasless Fast Expand for Lucifron. No real surprise so far out of Vortix, deciding to open with that hatchery first, following it up with a pool. Bypassing gas, Vortix is a player that likes waiting on gas for a little while, going for those quicker 4-queen builds.
Now, both of these players have been impressing so much on international level. Lucifron, his TVZ has been getting progressively better. He started really impressing in TVZ somewhere around WCS Europe, where he was the only player initially to make Stefano look mortal. It was this really exciting 2-1 game between them, which Stefano managed to win quite narrowly against Lucifron, and then eventually it was Vortix, by the way, who took out one best-of-3 from Stefano in the grand finals before eventually going down against Stefano as well. But Lucifron has been playing so well in TVZ. He's been favoring a lot of mech play, Hellion harassment, Banshee harassment, and all the way back to the StarCraft beta, Lucifron has been this player who likes to make a lot of different unit production buildings with different add-ons, switches them out very, very creatively, and has all sorts of aggressive plays early on. And yeah, he's just been really impressive in this matchup.
You call it Hellion harassment. I call it Hellion murder. Sometimes Lucifron just likes to get in there and just stomp as many drones as he can flat, oftentimes with packs of 8 or 10 Hellions at a time. So he's very adept at doing that. He's also very adept at picking out a moment when, oh, okay, this opponent doesn't have the wall up completely at the front. They left themselves just a little bit vulnerable, and now I'm going to move in and strike. And we'll see what both these guys are going to do now. You can see very different APMs between the two players. Lucifron was a bit higher there for the second, but Vortix holding his own now. So far, just a few queens have popped out for Vortix. He's moving down towards that multiple queen, very little gas route, as we mentioned before. Now taking his double gas inside his main, as we see Hellion starting to be produced for Lucifron up inside of his main.
Yeah, no real surprises there. Starting up with reactored Hellions, and of course the question is always for Zerg, does it stop there with just the one factory and reactored Hellions, or is there another factory producing more reactored Hellions, or maybe getting the pre-infernal igniter with the blue flame Hellions? But for now, he's going to follow it up with a starport, which is probably going to be making at least one Banshee, maybe more.
Yeah, I mean, Lucifron can throw a lot of different looks at you. Sometimes he'll save that gas on Cloak and end up moving into that blue flame that you were talking about before if he wants to decide to make more factories very early on. At this moment, though, we see third base coming up for Vortix, also moving up to 2 more gas, but don't know. There we go. The Evolution Chamber is just now being dropped down, so we will have some sort of Spore Colony defense if necessary.
Yeah, and with that SimCity that Zergs have been favoring, making them at that natural, they can easily use just a few queens to block off Hellions from doing that run-by, which of course Vortix knows about. He knows that Lucifron would like to do this if there's any chance at all.
If anyone in the world knows that Lucifron likes to be aggressive with Hellions, it should be Vortix. So, and yeah, Lucifron's just taking a peek around. He knows that there's nothing really to exploit up at the front. The DPS on Hellions is very low, so it'll take a while for him to be able to knock down that third, but he just wants to put on pressure to hopefully draw some units out of position. For now, though, just going up to layer tech, we see the first Banshee starting to fly across the map, and this is a common attack we've seen a lot of times in TVC, that about 8 Hellions plus a Banshee overhead to provide a bit of additional DPS.
Yeah, and that Banshee will start to do significant damage on the hatchery, so there will be a forced move out with the queens to start harassing those.
Yeah, and the Banshee actually has to get away right away. Wasn't able to sit in there with the Hellions long enough. They would have actually died pretty quickly. 3 queens is a pretty stout defense, even with the splash damage that the Hellions dish out. They're going to need to get away eventually. But, you know, Lucifron, he's going to keep on the pressure, but he's using this as a way to move into his mech strategies. We see double armories coming up, and also to put up that third base down over at his third right now.
Yeah, and we see an Overlord moving into Lucifron's base, which pretty much saw all it needed to see. It didn't see a second factory, it saw that tech lab and the starport, and momentarily Lucifron was making that Medivac upgrade to try and fake out Cloak Banshee, but he felt like he needed the resources right away, cancelled it even as the Overlord was still there. So Vortix knows no Cloak will be coming, and therefore we see no Spore Crawlers coming up whatsoever. And that's a nice little thing for Vortix to know.
Yeah, and Lucifron's not usually the player to go for really late delayed Cloak Banshees anyway. He either goes for them in the beginning or he doesn't. For now, though, economy is pretty similar when you take Mules into account. Lucifron just taking his time putting up his third. He's already done a nice spine crawl, or I'm sorry, a supply depot wall up at the front just to make sure that Zergling run-bys aren't going to affect him all that badly. But for now, he's just finishing up factories number 4 and 5, I believe, at the moment, researching 1-1 upgrades.
He made 4 factories all at once, so massive powering there from Lucifron. 4 factories, 2 armories, and double upgrading, and he's getting that 3rd command center. Really banking on the fact that Vortix, he is defensively minded right now. So Lucifron, he doesn't have bunkers filled with marines, siege tanks, and so on. He's just completely thinking aggressively, Vortix completely defensively, and they're falling comfortably within their own roles, and this allows Lucifron to power so crazily like that.
Yeah, we thought maybe we were going to see something a little bit weird. These guys have matched up so often. The Zerglings look like they're very nice trap on the Hellions there, not losing I think only just one Zergling went down. But so far, no. I mean, they've been doing the things that they've been known for. Vortix is going up through his tech tree pretty aggressively. He's going to have a lot of infestors on 3 base. He'll be able to move up to Hive Tech and eventually a 4th when he moves out with a max infestor army if he so desires. And Lucifron is going down max, so both these guys just doing kind of what they're known for.
Yeah, we've seen that units lost stab. Almost nothing has been lost yet for either side. They've been playing very carefully. And I guess when you think about it, it kind of makes sense. When you know all of each other's attack techniques, it is easier to defend against them or to discount certain things because you know each other that well. So to see a patient game, a waiting game like this between these 2 brothers, not too surprising when you think about it.
Yeah, and they're both operating on their strengths right now, so they're both in their comfort zone, and we'll see who ends up making the first move here. We just have this build-up period. Now, is Lucifron going to go for the mech strategy where he decides to move out and establish presence on the map? I mean, it is almost pure Thor at this point. Or is he going to sit back, max out a little bit, get a nice secure 4th base in the middle before he decides to put on pressure? We'll find out in just a second, but otherwise, supplies are very close to each other. Lucifron adding on a 4th command center, and really, we're just kind of 15-minute no rush right now.
Yeah, definitely. And it may be more than 15-minute no rush, Kevin, as we look at their builds, and we see already Hive and Aspire has been started for Vortix. So you could call it a bit of an anti-timing if Vortix chooses to attack anywhere in the next 2 minutes or so. He would be having all these investments in tech, and he wouldn't be able to use that yet. And from what I know about mech play in Terran against Zerg, it's kind of the same thing for Lucifron. He's getting double armory, which means you would want at least 2/2 upgrades in order to make that really pay off. Usually you don't see people getting double armory, double forge just to hit a 1-1 timing. And also from what I know about mech, you don't really want to move out yet until you have at least 1 planetary fortress in play, preferably in a forward location, so that you can focus all of the opponent's attacks or counterattacks on that spot, and it's easier to defend. So maybe Lucifron is just going to wait until he has 200 supply with 2/2 upgrades and then move out. And then we'll be able to see, can Vortix hold with those Broodlords? Because that kind of mech army will be incredibly powerful.
It will be, and that's exactly what he's doing. He's saving up that next command center to turn into a planetary fortress. Banshee's doing a little bit more damage here. One's gone down, but they've certainly done their damage now. And, you know, Vortix, one thing to note, he actually went for a pretty early Neural Parasite. He actually picked up on the fact that there were no tanks whatsoever and decided to research the Neural Parasite a little bit earlier on to give his infestors a bit more utility against the Thors that would be on the field. So kind of a cool maneuver from him that's a little bit earlier than he usually goes for.
Yeah, that's a very early Neural Parasite finishing at 1420. Very good point, Kevin. And we do see that Lucifron is now adding those tanks, so those will be useful. We see Lucifron moving out now as his 2/2 is about to finish up. It's not quite done yet, so he doesn't probably want to move right in unless he somehow said the timing of attacking before Broodlords is more important than finishing off my 2/2. And that's exactly what looks like is happening now, as Vortix just wants to wait for the Broodlords to come out, and Lucifron is hitting in a very powerful timing now.
Yes, he is. And if he can delay for even a few more seconds, that 2/2 is going to kick in the middle of the fight, which would actually be critical for him. It's just seconds away from finishing right now. Infested Terrans are dropping down to absorb some hits, and the Roaches run up to the front. There is a Neural Parasite already hitting 2 of these Thors, a couple of them actually, so they can start to work against their own members there. But the Roaches are enough to start moving back these mech forces slowly but surely. The Infested Terrans actually getting in, finishing off a Siege Tank and a Thor from around the side at the same time. Vortix now, all of his supply is tied up at the 25 Roaches that are spawning right now. He has virtually 0 army on the field at this moment, but Lucifron doesn't really have enough right now to keep pushing, and he's forced back.
Oh, I think that was a good attack by Lucifron. He traded a lot, he lost a little bit less than his Zerg opponent, and he is mining very, very powerfully. Usually you see Zerg with the superior economy, but Terran, he's got 84 SCVs right now, so for Lucifron to trade, even though it's a mech army, it's not altogether too bad. And he secured his 4th, he's on 4 against 4 bases, starting his 3-3, and also adding a lot of starports and command centers. And all of this fight happened before Broodlord, so that's always a fight you'd love to be taking.
And the best part is, too, is that he's putting up all these starports just before this isn't reactionary. It's not like, oh no, there's 15 Broodlords out there, I guess I better get some Vikings in play, or I guess I better get some Ravens up, as the trademark Lucifron. Hellions actually coming through and dealing out quite a bit of damage. 23 workers killed for him there. Wow. Very nice job. But he's able to establish these at a time that he can match the Broodlords 1-for-1 in the air.
Yeah, at first I thought, is that a very early battlecruiser switch? But of course it is exactly as you said, preparing for those Broodlords, which he has known will be coming out ever since minute 12 when he scooted over with those 2 Banshees.
Mm-hmm. And so now he's sending more Hellions out. He just wants to pin his opponent down for a while, make sure that he gets all these command centers up. He can even start to sacrifice SCVs as he replaces those with more and more mules, and just establishing dominance on the map. I'm not sure what his unit composition is right now. I'd like to take a look at the units tab here in a second, as he's making only Hellions, only Vikings right now. He does have a Thor, and he still does have 11 tanks, so he's still got a pretty stout anti-roach killing force.
Yeah, this is some trademark Lucifron play, getting with those Hellions. They're kind of expendable right now. He just wants to kill some drones in order to make that 3rd Remax from Vortix that much weaker. And the Vikings coming in now will be able to take down 1 Broodlord before even the first fungal growth hits already. He's chasing away the rest.
That's right, so fungal growths are actually hitting these pretty well, but the infestors are forced to come into range of the siege tanks. They're actually getting picked off pretty quickly, so the first round of Vikings has actually done its job to delay this force for a little while. The corruptor count's not all that high. Good fungal actually catches some more of those units out in the front, and the infested Terrans are up in the front actually absorbing some of the shots from the siege tanks, so they're not allowed to come through and pick off the infestors at the back. So far, Vortix's control has been pretty good, and he's starting to win the siege war in the air despite the early Vikings from Lucifron.
Nice re-siege up again by Lucifron, and he will immediately unsiege again. That's some excellent control there on the tanks. He doesn't want them sieged when there's only Broodlords, but as soon as the roaches come in, he sieges up, and you will see him unsiege right away again, probably, most likely, once he starts mining that. As Lucifron is just trying to keep his tanks alive and taking down as many Broodlords as possible with those Vikings.
There are only 3 Vikings on the field, though, and the corruptor count's starting to get staggeringly high. And it doesn't matter how many Broodlords you have, as long as you have more than 1, you have enough that you can start pushing back the siege lines of the Terran player over and over again. So Vortix has done a good job establishing the map. Not only that, but he's also taken his 5th base in the top left-hand corner. So now he's going to make his way in. Now he feels the time is right to strike, and he's actually taking out this planetary fortress very quickly, despite the fact that it's being healed up. It goes down completely. There's GG. Vortix takes game number 1 from his brother Lucifron. Lucifron is well, it's actually Vortix actually looking pretty happy with himself right there. He's in quite contemplation right now. A lot of emotion out of him here, and we'll see what Lucifron's going to do to try and battle back in game number 2. But, you know, it was kind of a weird game because both players were doing what they're known for. No real mind games, not really trying to trick their opponent or anything, just kind of went at it.
Yeah, I kind of can get that. It's probably this code of honor between brothers, but also like because you know all these attack techniques that you might be wanting to do, like any rush that is like your favorite rush, your brother would know about that. So that's why we get to see a game like that. I thought Lucifron was doing fairly well with the attack. He did lose a whole bunch of Thors against, I guess, kind of cheap units, Zerglings and Roaches, and then eventually couldn't stem the tide of that counter attack. I'm not sure exactly 100% what went wrong. He tried to take down some Broodlords, maybe a bit better spread on the Vikings, as it was mostly initially infestors taking down those Vikings 4 at a time.
Yeah, they fought each other to a standstill after that first engagement, and I think the standstill favored Vortix, because if Lucifron had been able to move forward and do damage, I think he would have been all right. His investment would have paid off, but he wasn't able to do so, and Vortix was able to hold this very expensive large mech army off of very cheap units while he was investing in infrastructure all over the place.
Yeah. So Lucifron just needed 1 or 2 more minutes, or maybe just a little bit better spread on the Vikings. Of course, it's not easy to keep doing that as he was sieging and unsieging his tanks. Some sexy plays there, but first map will be going to Vortix. So let's see what the second map will be, and whether we're going to be able to see a game 3.
That's right. It is a loser picks format here, so Lucifron will have the choice of map, and it looks like it's going to be Ohana. So Ohana's going to be the choice. Certainly a map that we see a lot of mech play on from Terran players, so I'm not terribly surprised to see this. You know, I mean, obviously, with our map pool especially, Antiga's usually a go-to pick for a lot of Terran players, but I think this choice fits Lucifron's traditional play a little bit better.
Yeah, I think so too. And if we see a very quick mech play coming out from Lucifron, sometimes we see Zergs on this map going for quite quick Mutalisk play, like very, very quick, in order to try and deny that third base from the Terran players. So let's see if that's something we might be seeing here.
All right, well, our players are getting in and ready to go. I always like that. You see, the way that Vortix looks right now, that's the way I always imagine that Goody just plays on a regular basis. He just sits back. Yeah, he just sits back and thinks and makes a click every about 10 seconds or so. What should I make now in SCV?
Goody is like the chess player in StarCraft 2, isn't he? I will move this in position here. For those of you who might not know Goody, he's rumored, well, he's known to be a pretty good mech player with some flaws in his play, but with his good strategical play, despite having only 90 to 100 APM, he has beaten many a good player. So therefore, he's such a nice example when we're thinking about this slow, pensive, methodical mech type of player.
And here we go, guys. Let's jump into game number 2 right now on Ohana.
IPL 5.